Hello everyone, it's GigaBeef here, and today I'm going to show you the limits of the 366 APM ammo. With 90 damage, this round theoretically one-taps players, but this is not the case at certain ranges and through certain armor either. So we're going to find out where this limit actually is, as it's one of the biggest points of confusion in Tarkov. This round is interesting because it is one of the few left that is accessible early with enough potential damage to hit for over 85, which is the current HP on a PMC's Thorax. There are others that do this, but they typically either have low penetration such as buckshot and slugs, so are unsuitable for shooting at armoured targets, they're found in stationary weapons, or they're locked behind loads of progression and tasks such as the 338 Lapua rounds and the ones for the Ash 12. APM on the other hand can be crafted at Workbench 2 as well as bought from Mechanic 3, and it's one of the most powerful rounds still available on the flea market, although usually for an extortionate price. Balancing wise, this does make sense as it only goes with the VPO 209 semi-auto and the 215 bolt action, so you can't run around full autoing this thing or even get relatively decent recoil. But while the 90 damage on this ammo is clearly awesome, there is often the misconception that it will one-tap players to the Thorax more regularly than it will in reality due to the damage drop-off over range and the mitigation through armor. With regards to range, you can expect to kill unarmored players and basic scavs up to about 80 meters. A very useful resource that I use for this kind of thing is TarkovBallistics.com, which now has a calculator to let you specify the round and the custom distance range. You can even change the parameters such as muzzle velocity if you're using different barrels or suppressors, for example. But here we can see that at 80 meters we should deal 84.95 damage, which just won't kill someone. During the testing, we did check to make sure that this was the case using co-op offline, and usefully, because leg shots have a 1x damage propagation multiplier when blacked, i.e. 1 to 1 across the rest of the body, we can just look at the overall health pool of the PMC to see how much damage the round did at that distance with no armor into the leg. Let's do an 80 meter shot onto one of my legs. So at 80 meters it should do precisely 85 damage, so I should end up on 355 HP. Whenever you're ready. 354. With a single shot, the round dealt 86 damage. If we amend the ballistics page to match the velocity of the 215 with a suppressor, this is indeed what we'd expect to see, as it is very slightly higher than the figure we looked at a second ago. So we can one-tap unarmoured players and basic scavs under roughly 80 meters, which is good to know. Do bear in mind though that there are 3 scav health pools. The other 2 have 100 and 150 Thorax HP, so is too much even for APM to deal with at any distance. Next we have the issue of armor. Armor reduces the damage dealt to the player on the receiving end, even if the round penetrates and passes through it. This damage reduction depends on the penetration value of the round and the protection class of the armor that is hitting it. Because of this, as the 90 damage is only just over the 85 threshold, we can imagine that it's unlikely that we'll get a one-shot through armor due to this most of the time. Originally I wanted to test lots of different distances like 50 meters, 25, 10 and point blank, but it turns out this wasn't necessary because the answer is very binary. Starting at 50 meters, we first used a class 5 rig, the AACPC, which left us on 28 HP for 57 damage dealt. I did actually pen, 28 out of 85. At this distance, raw APM deals 87 damage with a small amount of distance related drop-off, so the damage mitigation here is 34%. This is a seriously high number and maybe gives us some idea of how well class 5 performs against other rounds in this penetration class, such as 545 BT. At point blank, this didn't really make any difference, leaving our PMC on 25 HP for 60 damage instead, which makes sense as the starting damage there is 90. Given this was not particularly surprising, let's move on to class 4. We tested the 6B3TM, aka the Rat Rig, the Trooper and the MMAC, and at 50 meters, every single shot left our PMC Thorax on precisely 17 HP for 68 damage. This implies a 22% damage mitigation versus the base damage of 87 at this range. This is interesting because it implies that every armor within a particular class has the same mitigation value. Clearly we didn't test everything, but as I had originally suspected that APM is not a one-shot through full durability class 4, it's interesting to know that it's basically the same for every single one. Even moving from 50 meters up to point blank, we end up with 13 Thorax HP for a 20% mitigation value, which is still a ways off getting a straight kill. Or let's not even do 25, I'm not sure if it's worth it. Let's just do point blank because the class 4, I think it'll save me, even at literally right up to my face, I think.
Ready?
Yep. Oh, 13. However, moving down to the class 3 rigs, we have a slightly different story. You might suspect that the mitigation would be something around 10% here, but at 50 meters, APM straight one-taps the Dr. Disrespect armor, which by the way is the new highest durability class 3, as well as the Untar, which is the worst in the category. Yeah, it killed me. I'm kind of surprised that it kills you through the DRD, because that means that the mitigation is really low. From this, it's pretty safe to say that the Packer and any Class 2 will get one shot as well. So the remaining question here is, what is the mitigation on a Class 3 versus APM anyway? We moved back out to 80 meters to test this, as any damage reduction should prevent a kill, and indeed we have 3 Thorax HP remaining. Yep, Thorax, let's go. Oh, it put me on 3. With a base damage of 86 at this range from the VPO, it means that we're receiving 82 damage, and the mitigation is only 4 to 5%, which is much less than I expected. If we do actually try the Packer, it gives literally no mitigation at all, and we die at 80 meters, which is just over the damage to kill a player with no armor.
Oh,
there you go.
okay.
You get no mitigation on the Packer. So what we have learned here in general from this testing is that firstly, the damage mitigation from armor is heavily dependent on the armor class being used, and appears to be entirely unaffected by which armor you use within that class, at least for the first shot anyway. Around the 42 penetration mark, firing at armor in the equivalent category of class 4 results in about 20 to 22% mitigation, whereas moving up to class 5 boosts this dramatically to around 33% if you do get a penetration at all. Going the other way round down to class 3, the mitigation drops significantly, providing a reduction of less than 5%, and at class 2 it's practically as if you aren't wearing any armor at all. The last thing that I want to mention is around armor damage itself. This has always been a bit of a mystery, at least to me, and to be honest this test didn't really help, but since I have some of the data I may as well share it. As we said, at 50 meters the damage of APM is 87, and as per the wiki its armor damage is 60%, implying 52.2 points of armor damage. Now, using the data we collected for the actual damage dealt to each piece, we can reverse engineer what the raw damage was by remembering about the destructibility table for armor, which depends on the material. For example, the AACPC ends up with 50.9 out of 60 for 9.1 armor damage after the destructibility modifier of 45%, so before this the raw damage should have been 20.2. Doing this for every piece of armor that we tested, I ended up with values from 20 to 25 of raw armor damage, which seems to be way lower for all the armors than for the 52.2 figure that we had before, when we simply took the base round and multiplied it by the percentage on the wiki. I honestly don't really know what's going on here, because I was kind of hoping that it would be more consistent when I did the calculation, but if you have any suggestions then feel free to leave them in the comments, as it may well be the subject of a future video. Ah! Was that you or me? Was that you shooting me?
It was me.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought it was the sign for me to shoot.
Yes, you shot me in the left arm.
Oh damn.
If you haven't seen my Class 4 armor breakdown yet, then go and watch that next. Otherwise, as usual, a big shout out to all my patrons. Hit all the buttons if you enjoyed the video, and as always, have fun in your raids.